Hey skiers, I'm Jeff from skiessentials.com.
And I'm Bob. How's it going?
Bob and I are here today to talk about the Blizzard Anomaly 102.
This one.
That one, thanks Bob. I think it's the only anomaly that we haven't done a long form video for.
Yeah, it's been included
Correct.
in, I think, series overviews or...
Introduction, yep, Anomaly Introduction. It had its own ski test video.
Yep.
It was in comparison videos, but
Yep.
we've never stood here and done a devoted Anomaly 102 review.
Time for everything.
We also recently got some questions about it, so we thought now would be a good time. Bob has two pairs of Anomaly 102s next to him. Basically, the new graphic is the closest to the sign. They're still purple. They no longer have turns on them.
There's abstract turns, and then there's one large powder slash turn here superimposed on the bottom half.
Fair.
Yeah.
Do you think it's a improvement?
No.
Graphics-wise?
I like
Yeah.
this one.
I'm glad they kept it purple.
Yeah.
I always thought the purple was a good color
Yeah.
for that. And then I brought Rustlers. So I've got two pairs of Rustler 10s here. This is a new 2026 graphic, Rustler 10. This is the current 2025 graphic. That was also the 2024 graphic. One of the questions that we got recently was like, how are these skis different? Because on paper they look very similar. And I can understand that, because if you just if you glance at them, the dimensions are relatively similar. And then they both say things like true blend and flux form.
Right.
And without digging more into what those things are and the differences between the different types of true blend and flux form that are used, then you might think that they're very similar.
Yeah, and it always amazes me how many companies make multiple skis in the same width.
Yeah, we typically have that conversation with Vocal.
Yeah.
I feel like they're, I want to say the biggest offender, but it's not very offensive.
They cover their bases
Yeah.
with their widths.
Yeah. So anyways, as kind of a refresher or a reminder, the Anomaly series was all new for 2025, and it replaced the Brahma Bonafide Cochise. We had Brahma 82 and 88, but those four skis have turned into four Anomalies, 84, 88, 94, and 102. I've always kind of felt like the 102 is the most interesting because it really like split the width between the Bonafide and the Cochise. Like there wasn't a 102 before.
Right.
Where all the other widths like more or less correspond pretty well to a pre-existing ski. I guess Anomaly 94 is narrower than Bonafide, but still.
Yeah, I wrote that in the article that I feel like this one stands on its own.
Yeah.
You can't say it legitimately replaces a Cochise or a
No.
Bonafide. It's really its own thing.
Yeah, I also feel like especially the 84 and the 88 ski very similarly. And even the 94, I think, skis pretty similarly to 88 and 84. And then, 102 has always felt a little different for me.
Yep.
So we can get right into it. Lots of different footage to share from two different years. So a lot of what you'll see is on the older graphic, but construction and shape doesn't change.
Right.
Just graphics. So, Bob, you want to explain what's going on in that thing? And maybe as you're doing that, I can mention some differences over here.
Sure. A lot of layers here. Blizzard certainly stepped up kind of their older construction profile from those Cochise and Bonafide days. So what they're doing here is using their True Blend all mountain wood core, so stringers of beech and poplar. What they're doing specifically is having the central cord of beech stringers, the denser wood, be longer, and then along the sides it's more infused with poplar. There is still beech, but it's shorter stringers. And they really do a nice job with this True Blend core of making it specific to each ski. And that's something that obviously translates into your Rustlers over there, Jeff.
Yeah, so I have True Blend free over here.
Yep.
So without getting into details, it's just I asked you what the opposite of dense was. This was the reason. It's a less dense wood core.
You didn't like airy as my antonym?
It's an airier wood core.
Yeah.
So, on paper, true blend, but there is a pretty big difference. And we've had a fun back and forth email exchange with Blizzard like all day today. And we've learned some like little details about true blend cores that even though they put them under the same umbrella, like True Blend All Mountain, True Blend Free, they do tweak them a little bit per ski.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty interesting. They didn't really get into like details, but the cores are unique to each ski.
To each model.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I thought was interesting.
I did too.
And they had never really talked about that before.
Right. No, I would have guessed that it was a True Blend All Mountain wood core was the same.
Right.
Except for length.
I would have guessed so too. That like it comes in that, you've seen like the raw materials of a wood core. I would have thought that like they just take the same exact block for every ski and just mill it differently, but that is not the case.
Nope.
Which is like another kudos to Blizzard. Like we've talked about it with True Blend wood core a lot, where like each length is a different, like actually a different core.
Right.
And just knowing that like each ski is also different is like multiplying, like it adds another factor. So they have to have like an insane amount of different wood cores.
Yeah, I mean, we always talk about Vocal as taking kind of that next step in engineering and design, and I would say Blizzard is right there with them in terms of how specific they are for each construction.
Yeah, and I got to see it firsthand.
Yeah.
I was in the factory in Mittersill, and I'm kind of surprised that didn't come up in conversation there of like, no, this is a 102 core, this is a 94 core. Anyways.
That's the wood core in here. And then we get 2 sheets of metal. There's one full one on the bottom. And then on top of the wood core, they basically take that second layer and divide it into 3 longitudinal parts. The one in the center goes on top of the core. And then there is a layer of fiberglass. And then the remaining outer portions of that metal laminate are in strips along the sides. So a lot of layers going on here. And really add up to a pretty sturdy ski. You used the word dense. I would certainly relay that into how this thing feels and sounds.
Totally.
Both in the studio here and on the snow. I mean, it is a rock solid ski as a result of this construction.
And in comparison over here, I also have flex form metal.
Yeah.
So again, like if you don't dive into it, the details, it can seem very similar, but I have far less metal over here in Rustler. So I've got a sheet of metal underfoot and then 2 sheets that run along the edges.
Yeah.
So quite different.
And then flex and weight are also pretty different here. We do have an 8 centimeter gap in length, but we're at 2,270 grams here in the 188.
Yeah, this is much lighter.
Yeah, and then your 180 there is
under 1900.
Under 1900. So almost a 300 gram difference, plus 8 centimeters.
Yeah.
And then
remember when they made Rustlers and they were lighter than Hustles?
Yeah, I do.
That was fun.
And then flex-wise, it's a pretty distinct difference in the flex as well.
That thing's pretty stiff.
Yeah.
This has got a lot more bend to it. I'd say particularly in the tail.
Yeah. And I was doing my one-hand flex thing here, and you can really get the Rustler to.
It helps that it's already like pretty bent, and we can look at that right now. Actually, you want to talk shape?
Yeah, I mean that's it for construction. It's a burly, strong ski, and I think shape is where we see even more exaggerated differences.
Yeah.
Do you want a whole pair?
Sure. Yeah, why not? So, I'd say the overall theme here with Anomaly 102, especially compared to something like a Rustler 10, is it's just flatter. It's flatter everywhere. So there is camber underfoot, but it's not like particularly high rising camber.
Yeah.
Mostly relatively flat. And then by length, there's a lot of tip rocker, but there's no significant splay here. Like it's almost like you're still going to have an effective edge like right up to there, even if you're not at a high edge angle. Maybe technically not, but that's still going to interact with the snow pretty frequently. And then the same is true in the tail. So again, like by length, there's a decent amount of tail rocker, but there's not much splay back here at all. So it's pretty darn flat. And then Bob, you were pointing out before we started filming, it's all side cut.
Yeah.
In the sense that there's no taper to it at all. And then this one has a 21 meter turn radius. So Cochise was what, like 25?
That was long.
Cochise was long. So that's like kind of one of the things that has made this ski, I'd say, a little bit more useful in a bigger variety of situations than a Cochise was. And it does differentiate it a little bit, but it's do you find the 21 meter turn radius, like, if anything, a little misleading?
So I find it to adhere to and prefer to go longer than.
Me too.
I don't feel like it is a short 21. If
No.
you think of something like a Black Crow's Justice that has a 20 meter turn radius.
That feels
totally different.
Yeah.
But still has,
It's very strong.
Very strong
yeah,
ski.
But it's so much rounder in its turn shapes.
Yeah, yeah. And then other skis, like we've compared it to an Enforcer 104, that has a shorter radius.
Yeah, that one's a lot turnier.
That feels a lot turnier.
Yeah.
So no, I think it's at or longer than stated radius.
Yeah. I'm going to put in that footage of the guy that worked for Blizzard that fell, because you can really see it wanting to go straight there. It's like, yeah, it's not like, not the nicest footage to share, but I think it does a good job showing what the ski wants to do.
It's not a nice ski.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's an important thing to get across. Like, we were talking about the layers, and I couldn't help but get that, in Shrek, when Shrek is telling Donkey that ogres have layers, and Donkey thinks he's like a parfait, but Shrek thinks he's like an onion. This is more onion than parfait.
Okay.
Donkey's point was everyone likes parfait, but with an onion, it's a harsher thing, and so this has layers more like an onion, where that's more like a parfait.
Fair.
If you keep up with my analogy there.
Yeah, I'm going to say that your knowledge of Shrek far surpasses mine.
Okay.
Probably because you have 3 kids.
Yeah, I think I watched it before I had kids, though.
Right.
Great movie.
Anyways, take a quick look at the Rustler, just because I do think it's important to highlight these things. So just way more splay in the rocker profile, both in the tip and in the tail. And I've often talked about Rustlers being really close to twin tips. They're kind of like partial twin tips, which is just very different than an Anomaly. 17.5 meter turn radius. I think the 188 is what, 18.
It's another meter, yeah.
Yeah. And then this one, also quite different, does have a lot of early taper. So they're pretty different. It's like, I can totally understand if you're looking at them in a catalog or on a website that they could come across as pretty similar, but boy, when you have them in your hand, they're very obviously different, and when you ski them, they're even more obviously very different.
Yeah.
So, you want to talk performance?
Yeah, sure.
Groomers first?
Yeah, so I remember when Blizzard first brought these in here for us to test, and they were excited. They're like, hey, we brought a 188 for you, Bob. And I'm like, oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I was definitely a little nervous. And those fears were, I would say, warranted.
Yeah.
Like a 182 on groomers around here in Vermont, I think makes a lot more sense.
Yep.
If you're doing a lot higher speed turns, if you have a race background, if you're a super aggressive expert, sure, go longer. But like on trail, this 188's a lot to come around on.
Yeah. And is now a good time to point out that there's also a 192?
There's also a 192, but there's nothing shorter than a 176.
I know.
So they are emphasizing
It's pretty interesting.
Strong skiers, either large and aggressive and or skilled.
Yeah, and if you're not at least one of those things, then don't even think about it.
Right.
Really, there's no point.
Yeah.
There's so many other skis that would be more fun.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty interesting. Like, I ski it. I don't know that I've skied the 102 and the 176, but I should try it, because I really like the 88 in the 176 and the 84.
I think that'll open things up for you.
I've always skied in the 182, and yeah, on a groomer, it's like it's a lot of ski. It kind of like it doesn't have like a minimum speed requirement, but it almost does.
I think it has a minimum radius requirement that can only be achieved by speed.
Yeah.
If you're trying to make shorter turns
On a groomer
in slower or more moderate speeds, you got to push it a little bit more. It's not going to bend like your Rustler over there.
Yeah.
You need that speed or to access that longer radius.
Yeah, this thing like snaps into really tight carves if you want it to.
Yeah.
And maybe I'll even include some footage of that. I think we've got footage of Matt on a Rustler 10. You can probably see a pretty big difference there. But yeah, it's interesting. I would say on a groomer in most situations, unless you're going really fast, it doesn't feel like particularly rewarding.
Right. I mean, we talk about skis that you're able to access the side cut as being more rewarding. I think kind of an opposite example would be the Black Crow's Octo, that has an easily accessible shorter radius. That's a rewarding on-trail carving ski.
Yeah.
This is quite the opposite of that, where it's rewarding only if you're going at a certain speed.
Exactly.
And have stiff enough boots, strong enough legs, good enough skills to harness that energy and get the appropriate rebound.
Now, where I do think it is very rewarding, still in an on-piste format here, is anytime things get variable.
Yeah.
Like later in the day when the snow is kind of weird and you're hitting like pockets of firm and pockets of softer pushed around snow, it just doesn't flinch.
Yeah.
And it lets you ski like with a lot of purpose, and the ski tracks really well, and it does it without like you don't need to do crazy things to keep your balance as a skier, because the ski just motors through things. So it's like, if you're getting tired and if the snow is choppy, it's still like just absolutely crushes variable conditions.
Yeah.
Like I always feel really good on it. Like later in the day when you're like, I don't want to turn.
Right.
I'm just gonna go
Yeah.
straight. Like this is sweet. And
No.
it's like it's very, very confidence inspiring for skiing fast.
That's straight up bona fide influence.
Yeah.
Like that, if people have skied on a bona fide and know what we're talking about,
Yeah.
that quality translates straight through to Anomaly 102.
Yeah. Like when you get tired, instead of slowing down, you just go faster.
Right.
And the ski's
And
like,
the ski takes,
this is what you should do.
Yep.
Don't even try and go slower.
Right.
Just go straight.
Yeah.
So it is really cool. And there's a lot of skiers out there that like love that stuff. It's definitely not the majority, but that's why a lot of people really like the bona fide.
Yeah.
You can ski it, you can just point it straight and it's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Off-piste, my opinion of it has changed over the past year and a half. Do you want to know how? I should keep going.
Yeah. You brought it up.
Fair. I think it's far easier off-piste than I originally gave it credit for.
Yeah.
Part of that was skiing it in Austria with Marcus Kasten and like watching his like comfort sort of on it. And then that like inspired me to try and do more things on it. And so there's one side of it that I've always thought is really good, and that's similar to on-piste of like, if you just go straight and fast, it's awesome. It's fantastic. It just flies through things and eats, like absorbs the terrain and like eats everything up. That's always been good in my opinion, but I'm actually pretty impressed how willing it is to just be put completely sideways.
I can't do it.
It's tiring. That's the thing. Like it will do it because that long rocker profile It's not catchy, but you have to do it with like a lot of power and force.
Yeah. I'm not willing to put in that work for that type of performance.
Right.
For me, it's not worth it's not worth the compromise.
Well, you also like, I would say that you ski differently. Like, it's rare for me to see you put your skis completely sideways.
Right.
Like, you know, you're more like 45-degree angle that way, 45-degree angle that way, and like make quick wiggling turns to get your way through things. I'm more apt to just like go straight for a little bit and then go totally sideways to dump speed. And I actually think that they do that pretty well. It's just, it's not easy. They're heavy.
Yeah.
And like, you got to work.
Yeah.
And that, it's a little bit opposite than the conversation about on-piste, where like, if you're tired, you can just let them go straight. Like in an off-piste scenario, letting them just go straight can really get you in trouble.
Right.
So it is like, it comes along with, I don't know, some requirements.
Yeah. I also noted that I think that there's two nice applications for this off-piste. One is riding them flat and straight, like you were just talking about, and having some fun and getting in some trouble. And the other is getting them up pretty high and letting this straight shape, I know it's not going to come through, but this straight shape just do its job and just cut through whatever's in front of it.
Well, that's what you have to do if you throw them sideways too.
Yeah.
You have to throw them sideways at a high edge angle. You can't just like wash, like slip and smear a turnaround to get the ski sideways like you can on a Rustler.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, they like angulation and force.
Yeah.
And like, obviously, like no surprise that somebody like Marcus Kasten skis them really well.
Right, like he's got a race background.
Yeah, and he skis with a lot of angulation and a lot of force, so it works really well. And like Matt is another person that like, yeah, you can get on. He gets on Anomaly 102 and looks easy,
right? Because
he skis with a lot of power.
Yeah. No, I think that anything kind of up to the 4 to 6 inch range where you're going to find the bottom. You know, I think that the powerful skis in the 100 millimeter-ish range still do well there.
Yeah.
With the caveat that they're trying to find the bottom. They're stiff, they're heavy, and they like to be engaged. I think when you get over that into deeper snow, you know, it's not as enjoyable as something that's more shapely, like your Rustler.
Yeah.
So it's just all about your preference, and you know, these will float, but they won't be gentle about it.
Right.
It's just a harsher ride when you're trying to get them to be.
Yeah, there's nothing gentle about it at all.
Yeah.
In any application.
Right.
On or off piste.
Yeah.
Not gentle.
But that's the point, you know, and I think that there's a lot of people that are upset, I guess, that Cochise and Bonafide have gone away, but like that skier is going to do just fine on an Anomaly.
Yeah.
There's plenty of power there.
Plenty. I challenge you to to find a limit of its power.
Right, in a 192 Anomaly 102. Like there just aren't many more burly skis out there in the world.
Yeah. You want to talk some comparisons? We did a little bit of this in our office. I didn't ask this, but staying in a directional format, so got to exclude twin tips or even something like a Rustler over here for shape. In and around 102 underfoot area, what's the opposite ski?
Oh, geez. I don't know. Like Line Chronic 101 came to mind.
That's twin tip.
Sorry. So directional.
You broke the rules.
Elan Ripstick 102.
Right? It's got to be.
Yeah.
Like if you want to think about the complete opposite in a directional 102 underfoot free ride ski, Ripstick 102 is on this end of the spectrum, Anomaly 102 is on that end of the spectrum. They are complete opposites despite actually having a pretty similar shape.
Right.
You know? Like that's another one where if you looked at them on paper, as long as you glanced over the weight figure, you might think that they're kind of similar.
Right.
Like, yeah, 102 underfoot, directional, flattish tail.
Bluish purple.
Bluish purple? Yeah, sure.
Why not?
Why not? They might be similar, but they are totally opposite.
Yeah.
And then I was asking you a bunch of like, is it more than this ski? And by more than, I kind of just mean like stiffer, more powerful, generally usually harder to ski for something that's more ski.
Yeah.
And the easy ones to go to are the two that I think we agree that it compares most closely to is Mantra 102. So is it more ski than a Mantra 102?
It's more in that it doesn't turn as well.
Yeah, Mantra's turnier.
Mantra's turnier.
Now I'm going to throw a caveat into that where I think Mantra 102, for how I ski, is more ski in that it is more challenging to ski when you take it off piste.
Okay.
Because it's a little sharper.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it is willing to go sideways like an Anomaly.
No, but I think it's a slightly better floater in pure powder.
Sure. This is personal.
Yeah.
And then the other ski that it obviously compares very close to, which is interesting because it's, they're sister brands, both under the Technica group, the Nordic Enforcer 104.
Yeah.
Is it more ski than an Enforcer 104?
Again, yes, in that it is more of a directional charging mentality.
I think that's true.
I would much rather ski the Enforcer 104 off trail. Like in our woods here in Vermont, I would rather ski an Enforcer 104.
Once again, that's highlighting the differences between you and I, because I would not.
Yeah.
I would rather ski that off-piste than an Enforcer 104.
Yeah.
Because I also find the tail of an Enforcer to be like a little sharper, less willing. The shape overall is less willing to drift.
Yeah.
Sideways.
But very similar stats. I mean, you're like,
Yeah.
stiffness and weight between Anomaly and Enforcer are very similar.
Yeah. I think Enforcer feels a little stiffer too.
Yeah.
That's like kind of it for comparisons, really.
That's like the very similar. I think you can go a slight step down with things like Stokely Storm Rider 102.
Yeah,
Armada
lighter,
Declivity X 102.
more rockered, also lighter.
Rossignol Sender Sol 102. These are all kind of
Yeah, Sender Soul
similar
102 is
skis
also
that-
lighter. That one's pretty stiff in the tail, but it's not quite in that same league as Anomaly, Mantra, Enforcer.
yeah.
It's one step down, which
Yeah.
comes with positives and negatives depending on what you want. I asked you if it was more ski than a Scott Schmidt Pro, and you said yes, and I said no, can't be. And then if anybody has skied a Scott Schmidt Pro, you know what I'm talking about. That ski was a monster.
Maybe Scott has.
Scott Schmidt?
Yeah.
I would hope so.
Yeah.
Several of his skis. So that's it, I think. Anything else you want to say?
No, I think that, we kind of talk about who should be on it, and I think that unless you know you should be on it,
Yeah.
you should probably be on a Rustler.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's like kind of one of those. It's one of those skis where, like, if you have to ask, the answer is probably no.
Yeah. Like you have to be an existing bona fide Cochise skier, or
Yeah.
you're coming off of a storied race career and you're looking for a big mountain charger.
Yeah.
Then you're moving to Anomaly. But I think anyone less than that, or who doesn't want a full-time commitment, I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons why I don't want to own a Mantra 102.
Right.
It's a commitment. You
Right.
have to commit to making this type of turns that the ski wants to make.
Yeah.
It's hard to manipulate.
I don't know this at all, so I'm just
Okay?
completely speculating here.
I love wild speculation.
Me too. It's fun. Do you think they sell 10 times more Rustler 10s than Anomaly 102s?
I'd say so. I can't imagine.
If they don't, should they?
Yeah. it
Like
should-
skiing population, is it 10 to 1?
yeah.
I think so too.
Maybe more.
Yeah. Yeah.
15.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say 15's out of the question.
No. In fact, the more I start thinking of it, you bring me 20 average skiers,
Or 20 overall.
20
Random.
20 random selections from the skiing population.
Yeah.
It can't be more than 2
Right.
out of 20, and maybe 1.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a fun way to think about it. Which doesn't mean it's a bad ski. It's an
more
incredible
spe-
ski.
It's just more
It's
specific.
just- yeah.
Yeah, there's specific skis
Totally.
out there, and this
Yeah.
is one of them.
Totally. And like, I don't remember, and people from Blizzard, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I vaguely remember them talking about, and this was like years after they had decided to, but they were talking about like how they had been talking about not making it.
Yeah.
They were like, do we even need this?
With a lovely skiing Rustler 10.
Right. Yeah. And like ultimately the answer was yes, but if anything, it's more to like prop up the rest of the Anomaly collection. Like here's your big crazy freeride ski.
Yeah, I think you need to still appeal to that top end.
Yeah, it's why like car manufacturers. It's why like Audi made the R8.
Right.
You know what cars they sold a lot of when they made an R8?
A Jetta.
Like A6s, like A4s.
Right.
Because they made the R8 and people saw it as the pinnacle.
Yeah.
So, really like our car analogies lately.
Yeah, they're pretty good.
Yeah. I don't have a good one for Anomaly 102.
I mean, it's definitely a big, powerful sedan slash.
Yeah, like BMW M5.
But like lifted.
Yeah.
With bigger tires.
I hope no one's lifting their M5s. Anyways, so that's it. That's the Anomaly 102. Let us know if you have any questions, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye.